Hello and welcome to another episode of Uffsides NFL podcast. I am Matt Ufford. Joining me in SB Nation's studio in Manhattan is Dana Jacobson. Her show is TBD in the AM on CBS Sports Radio. She also works for CBS Sports Network, formerly, of course, of ESPN, where she hosted SportsCenter and First Take. Welcome. And I think the first question we have to ask you, Dana, are you Linnea Kekua?
I was just going to say, I'm real. Actually, I'm real. I'm not a figment of your imagination. Somebody did not create me. That's a good thing.
The story dominating football right now is, of course, Manti Te'o. His girlfriend who died, it was not real. It's a hoax. Great story by Deadspin. How can we talk about anything besides this?
I was telling you, I think we spent 2 hours and 20 minutes talking about it this morning on the radio show on a day where, by the way, in 2 days, we're going to decide who's playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. I think that's the thing. It is such a crazy story. You couldn't have dreamed it up.
Yeah, and I want to try to avoid speculation here because,
Okay.
Oh man, that would be so much fun to speculate for this time. But I want to talk about how this, because this is an NFL podcast, of course, how does this affect his draft stock? He's a first rounder, the top linebacker in the draft. Is this going to affect what teams will take him?
I have to think that it does in some way. The bottom line in the NFL is, can you play football? Can you play your position? But remember, he had a really bad showing in the championship game. So he was already trying to work his way back up to say, I'm really the player you saw in the regular season. So all these NFL teams are going to send their investigators out to figure out what actually happened. And I joked about it this morning, but it's like one of two things if it's black and white. It's either this guy was completely duped, which means he is completely malleable, so he's really coachable, maybe, or it's he was behind this, so he's totally scheming and maybe a little off. And is that what you want? Maybe you do. Maybe that's what you want in a guy out there. He's willing to do anything to be the best.
When I first read the story, it was my belief that I was like, he has to be in on it. He has to have taken part of it. As more details have come out, as I've looked at the background on Twitter, it seems more and more likely that he was duped, at least at some point. And if he did indeed find out about it in early to mid-December,
right,
which it seems to be. Did that affect his play in the national championship game?
I saw that was the speculation that maybe that was why we saw that in the poor performance that he had.
And again, as I think about it too, I don't know. I went to high school with a bunch of Mormons, and it's like you can't underestimate the naivety of a 22-year-old Mormon.
Well, you can't underestimate just how naive anybody can be nowadays.
True.
And my thing is, a lot of people are like, how could you couldn't fall in love with somebody online, and there's no way. And I admit it, hopeless romantic here. I have gotten to know people online. Now, granted, I then met them in person.
Yeah.
But depending on which story you believe, there was a meeting or there wasn't, and could there have been a woman that was there that was pretending to be her? I know it seems just like a Hollywood story. Somebody had to have written this, but I want to believe that this kid was not behind. To be behind something like this, and especially because then you're duping your family also. His father talks about talking with her on the phone in one of the articles that I read. It is truly insane to me. I will say, I don't know if it's a good or a bad. If he can play football, he'll be in the NFL. It may change his draft stock a little bit, but he'll be there.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. This could cost him millions of dollars.
Or make him millions of dollars if somebody then wants to write the story.
Yeah, man.
I hate to say that, but wouldn't you? You'd watch this. You would.
Absolutely.
By the way, if you saw this story, you'd be like, that would never happen. There's no way. Well,
I am amazed at how compelling and fascinating this story is. And here's the thing: I never saw the movie Catfish because I heard about it and I was like, that sounds really boring. I'm not going to waste my time with that. And then it happens in real life. I'm like, yes, I must know more.
Right. Everybody now is like, catfish. I just read something funny on Twitter where somebody's like, all these sports people with catfish, the last catfish they knew was Catfish Hunter. Like, they don't know what to do with it. But it really is absolutely insane what he could have cost himself. But I also think there's a level, bad stories that happen. If this was a hoax, he was completely duped, there may be some good that comes from it in that he got publicity. He had a different level of publicity. His play was there to be in the Heisman conversation, but it's tough for a defensive player to ever be in that conversation. Yeah. And we know his grandmother died. That we know for certain. That would have been tragic enough. You coupled it with this, and it became the story that it was.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Well, As much as fun as the Te'o cast could be fun.
You can't stop.
But there's actually other things going on in the NFL. Chip Kelly left Oregon for the Philadelphia Eagles. And everybody seems to think it's a pretty smart move, but Heath Evans of the NFL Network called it one of the worst hires in pro football history.
Wow.
Which seems like high-level trolling to me, or maybe low-level trolling. What's your take on it?
I don't think it was one of the worst hires. I get wanting to bring Chip Kelly in. And, it was interesting. You think about it, we've seen little shades of his offense in the NFL already, obviously with Robert Griffin III in Washington. And it's the idea of, can it be at the speed that Oregon plays at? Can it run at that speed? I don't think there's any way it can.
Yeah.
But it's certainly some wrinkle of this can work. And why not try? I mean, if look at the crop of coaches out there. Lovie Smith is out there, and people are saying, I don't get why he doesn't have a job. I understand that. Ken Wisenhunt is a coach I'd like to see.
Yeah.
They interviewed everybody. I think they interviewed 11 people. I understand looking at the guy who is one of the hottest coaches in college football, put Nick Saban aside, who says he's not leaving. Why wouldn't you want him?
Yeah, I actually would. And he's there's merit to his skills. He met with Bill Belichick in the offseason and consulted him, and that's the Patriots' up-tempo offense.
It's working.
And it is indeed. And I think that what you've got in Chip Kelly is an innovator. And the NFL certainly needs more of that, I think.
I think the biggest thing will be, and I know there was talk that he was looking at Georgia's defensive coordinator, who I'm forgetting, to possibly come in and be his defensive coordinator. I think I'd rather see him go with somebody who has that NFL experience because he doesn't have it. But either way, if you can get that offense playing even at half the speed that Oregon does, he's got so many weapons there that he should be able to do something with it. You can't just outscore everybody. You have to play defense too. But if he gets that even halfway on board.
I think it's interesting to look at college coaches moving to the pros, and Bill Belichick had a swing at the Browns and then and failed horribly the first time, and has had a brilliant second chance with the Patriots. And Pete Carroll had stumbled with the Patriots a little bit, and then has done very well with the Seahawks. So your first gig in the pros is not necessarily the defining moment of your career.
It almost seems like most guys, I know it's not all, but they need that sort of failure at that level.
Yeah.
I'll go back and I'll come back, and what I learned the first time around, maybe I can do better. The thing that Pete Carroll definitely did in Seattle right now, and I'm talking with players while they were in the playoffs, was the energy that he brought, that college level of enthusiasm, is sometimes missing when you're getting a paycheck for it, and it's different. And he reminded these guys that they're out there to have fun too, that this game is fun, that the intensity of it is fun. And if Chip Kelly can bring some of that, that's a huge advantage as well.
Yeah, especially in a cynical city like Philadelphia. That would be impressive.
I loved his "I don't want to get booed like Santa Claus" response. I appreciated him realizing he is going up against a tough crowd there. They'll love you, and then they will throw you out in the trash the next morning.
Let's talk about divisional weekend, because we had an amazing divisional weekend of football last weekend. And I'll start things off with the worst of the worst. And I like to pinpoint the absolute bottom of what we saw last week, and I think it's a tie between John Fox deciding to kneel with 31 seconds left,
and two timeouts,
and Peyton Manning, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, or Raheem Morris's blown coverage that allowed that Jacoby Jones touchdown.
It's a combination, but I'm going John Fox. This is what I don't understand, because once that happened, once you had the score, you had Peyton Manning. You have an MVP level quarterback who I know is not playing at the same level he did in Indianapolis. You have Peyton Manning, very smart guy out there. 2 timeouts, 31 seconds.
All you need is a field goal.
That's it. That's it. All you have to do. And by the way, everybody said, well, look at the end of the game, and Peyton threw that interception, which he said was a bad call on his part. I think there's a difference when you're looking at it saying, I've got a tie game and I know I'll get overtime if I don't do anything, and now I'm in overtime and I'm trying to win it. And I think had Peyton gotten the ball and been able to do something, if he didn't see it, if he couldn't just dump it off, he would have thrown it away. I have full confidence that Peyton would have moved them down the field in some way.
The very next day, the Falcons were down 31 seconds left, down 2 points, down 1 point, needed a field goal, 2 timeouts. They did that. They did exactly that and won the game.
And I thought it was interesting because John Fox was like, well, the difference was they were down. It wasn't a tie game. We were going to get. So what? If you can win it without going into overtime, you have Peyton Manning and 2 timeouts.
Absolutely insane. That's sort of conservatism. Oh, that's the bummer about.
That's why you lose.
Yeah. You can't.
You can't play not to lose.
Play to win the game.
That's right. My Herm has been, I've been yelled at and told that I make him sound Jamaican, but it's, you play to win the game.
That's actually a pretty good Herm.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like it.
They make fun of me. Tiki and Brandon keep telling me that I sound like I'm Jamaican or something.
It's a tough one to do. What about the other side of things? They're the best teams in the NFL. We were down to the Final Four. Who's your pick for the Super Bowl?
You're going to laugh. I can't believe I did that. I got on this Falcons kick going into the playoffs that this was the year, that they're finally there, that Matt Ryan is going to prove everybody wrong, that they have the best record in the NFC, they're going to be the team, and now I have to stay with that because that's me. So I'm staying with that pick on the NFC side. They're going to have their hands full, obviously, with San Francisco, and I certainly did not predict that Colin Kaepernick would be the quarterback that he was last weekend.
Yeah.
I will say this, Atlanta, again, so many weapons on offense. You've got Roddy White, you've got Julio Jones, and if you can cover them, oh yeah, there's that Tony Gonzalez guy.
And man, the Seahawks have trouble covering
right,
him.
and big corners that couldn't cover them. And Michael Turner looked more like Michael the Burner Turner last weekend. So offensively, I feel like Atlanta can do something. I just don't know if defensively they're going to be able to slow down that San Francisco offense. I still am picking them, and I'm picking the Patriots because when I saw them, I went to the Monday night game and saw them against the Texans, and they played at such a high level. I know it hasn't been the same, but they had that sort of the Tom Brady offense where no matter who got plugged in, everybody on offense did whatever they needed to do, and we saw that with Shane Vereen last week. These guys just keep coming in and just throw somebody in there, and they'll fill the role, and they'll get it done. And on defense, for 2 years, we've heard how young the defense is, and the defense is young. First it was too old, then it was too young, and now they're starting to click. Aqib Talib was a huge pickup for them in the offseason, had so many problems down in Florida, but he's working. He's working with the Pats.
I'll agree with you on the Patriots. I think that the Ravens are going to be troubled by they played more than 5 quarters of football last week, and that's going to wear on for a team that's already had a lot of injury problems. Is they're going to be tired. I think the Patriots are the easy call there. With the Falcons, and I followed Michael Turner all year because I had him on one of my fantasy teams, and he doesn't put together 2 consecutive strong weeks. Like he'll be weak one week and then be strong the next week, and I think that he just is at the age where he's only got every other week in him. So, and the Niners have a better front 7 than the Seahawks,
without a doubt.
So I think that's going to be a key to stopping that running game. I think I like the Niners in Atlanta. The Falcons, and I think the same way. I knew this. I felt that this was the year the Falcons got over that hump and got that playoff win, but they did not look very convincing doing it against the Seahawks.
No, the only thing I'll say against the Seahawks, I do think that second half was sort of what we were talking about before, the sit back, we've got the lead, let's just play not to lose.
That's Mike Smith for you.
Yeah, and the moment you do that, well, they're back in the game.
He's just John Fox in different clothes.
and same color hair, so it works.
They're all the same.
I admit my Atlanta pick, as much as I want to be like, I am so on board, and I'm just sticking with it because I believe you stick in what you say, but I'll be very lucky. I think I'll be very lucky if that actually comes true.
That's fair. What were your preseason picks? You can be honest.
I will. My preseason picks were what they were, I think, 2 years ago. It was Packers and Patriots. So I might at least get one.
Right. I had Packers and Broncos, so I'm done. So there you go. Let's take it back. I want to know about you and how you got into sports journalism. Take us back to day one.
Actually, I got into news first. I had always played sports as a kid and loved sports growing up. I went to Michigan. It was obviously a huge part of my life. And I was working in Traverse City, Michigan on air, so a small town in northern Michigan. My news director went to Indiana. I went to Michigan, and we would argue Big Ten sports. So our weekend sports guy is leaving, and they give no notice there. It's like, hey, I'm leaving, and I have a job in Champaign, Illinois. Happens to be Scott Hanson of the NFL Network was our weekend sports guy.
Wow.
Yeah, so small world.
And now he's doing Red Zone.
Right, and so he left with no notice. My news director looked at me, Mike Conway, and he says to me, you want to anchor? You're going to do sports. Okay. Now, I had never thought I would do it. I always thought, I didn't grow up reading box scores. I loved sports and I played it, but I just don't know enough. I started doing it, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of fun. I'll keep filling in, and I kept filling in, and the more I did it, I realized it was my passion and the thing I like to do, and the interviews I like to do, I could do on the sports side. And I just seemed to have a different level of energy. Everything just sort of clicked in a different way. So I moved fully into sports, and the things that I didn't know, I tried to learn, and always admitted, like, look, this was not what I thought I was going to do. I can figure this out. The best part was I had the sports background and the base of knowing sports and knowing rules and knowing how to play the games.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about that. It was more the, sportscast, what? So, in Northern Michigan, it was, Northern Michigan just won the college hockey championship. I should be leading with that and not NFL, whatever it may be. So I had to learn some of that stuff, but it was great. And that was it. Once I got into sports, worked my way up and ended up on a national scale.
What sports do you play? Because you're a tall drink of water.
Thank you. Basketball, not a shock. I started as a swimmer, was my first thing. I think I almost drowned at the age of 3 was the story. So my parents taught me to swim, and I was on the swim team at age 5. Butterfly,
Yeah.
I was a butterfly, breaststroke, and free. Butterfly was my best. I started with backstroke, and I don't know why I left it, but it ended up being butterfly, breaststroke, and free. Soccer, basketball. I competed in equestrian competitions for a little while. I learned how to ride at camp. Tennis. The one thing I didn't do, and this is always I hate admitting this, I didn't play softball ever, like on any competitive level, and I never really learned how to throw. I throw, and I hate saying this because this is the horrible way to say it, I pretty much throw like a girl. I throw like, I should say it this way, I throw like somebody, the commercial, the Volkswagen commercial, if you've seen it with the dad and the kid, it's not that bad. But I have to really concentrate to throw a baseball or a softball correctly because I never learned. I can hit, so I'm great on a softball team because I can field and I can hit because, what was the game? 600 or whatever it was where somebody would hit it up at 500. Yeah. So I could field, I could hit, but a
lot of first base for you.
Huh? Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. I can be a catcher. I'm okay as a catcher. Okay. I'm not going to throw anybody out in softball. You're not trying to do that. But yeah. And then like golf, I picked up later in life. But I would say that's probably the only thing that I really didn't do.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Got
know.
all your bases covered.
Yeah.
Who were some of your idols or mentors? Like when you looked up to the broadcasting?
Two people that I got to work with actually is just women on a female scale, Hannah Storm and Robin Roberts. I remember watching and seeing and thinking, wow, look at them, especially Hannah watching the NBA stuff. When I was working in Sacramento, it was so huge. And I met her when she came in to do a WNBA game, and she was doing the play-by-play, and she could not have been nicer, just, telling me about the industry and wishing me luck as I was moving forward and sort of telling me some of the things to watch for on a national scale. So for women, on a female side, that's what it was. Bob Costas has always been somebody that I've looked to. I love doing interviews, so I watch people that I think do it well, and he's just so smooth at everything, just amazing.
Yeah, he gets a I think unfair amount of backlash on the internet because he can be a little too he puts things in like a little Vaseline lens and loves his baseball and Olympics, and can be a little bit too mushy sometimes, but when it comes down to an interview style, he's really good.
He really is. And there's so many people that are good, but everybody looks at it and thinks it's so easy. It's a lot trickier because a lot of that ends up being listening. What are you listening to, and what are you hearing that you then follow up on? And he's just really good at that.
Yeah. Take me through the history of cold pizza / First Take, because it has for people who didn't watch ESPN in the mornings after SportsCenter,
right?
Might not know that.
So Cold Pizza, I was working on SportsCenter, and Cold Pizza was a show that had been on, and it was the morning show with everything, thus the name, Cold Pizza. And it wasn't really working because it was literally everything, like weather and entertainment and then sports. So you do like a news story, like 5 people died in a boating accident, and the Knicks are in town tonight. So it kind of didn't work. So they decided to retool it.
Although tying in the Knicks to boating accidents, not
clearly,
necessarily
yes.
very difficult.
You could see the same.
There's a metaphor.
Car crash kind of thing. Yes, you can see the correlation. So they decided to change it up, and they wanted to be all sports focused. And so the women that were on it weren't as prepared to do it, so they removed the women that were there and put them into some other assignments. Jay Crawford was there. Skip Bayless and Woody Page at the time were doing some debate, so they brought me in to replace. I I replaced 2 or 3 women. You know, that's what I do. So basically, I came in and they didn't know what it was going to be. And behind the scenes, Mike McQuaid came in, who was essentially our executive producer. Our producer then was this guy Pete McConville, and they just had a vision and worked on it. And it's like if the pendulum was all the way over here, we swung it to the other side and everything had to be tied to sports. And we kept sort of retooling it, and we did a lot of interviews, tried to do the entertainment people talking sports, tried to do videos, musicians in to sports videos, and eventually found the right mix of debate and interviews. And then they moved us to Bristol. They wanted to make some money on the show, and I get that. It's a business model. It's probably better to be in Connecticut than New York, right around the corner.
Yeah, because it's funny. Most people have never been in the studio, but we're on 9th Avenue and 34th Street, and then a block away on 8th and 34th, there's a black awning.
Yep.
And on that, there's a faded, it says cold pizza and ESPN on this faded black awning.
Nobody has moved into that studio since we were there, since we left in 2007, which is very sad. But there were some strange things about that studio I might be able to understand. But we went to Connecticut. They changed the name to First Take. And the show sort of stayed the same. We didn't have as many people in studio as guests, but we tried to keep it the same. And then it years later turned into the Next Generation, which is what it is now. I mean, it went to a little more debate and a little more debate. And now, obviously, that show is all debate, and Skip and Stephen A. and Carrie Champion is in that chair. That role changed drastically. And what Jay and I loved the most about it was we got to moderate debate, and then we could go do interviews, which we both loved, and we could break news and do things along those lines. And when that went away, both of us sort of had that moment of, this has been really fun, but need something else. So
is that when you took your talents elsewhere?
I left. I took my talents to South Beach. No, I went. They wanted it to be one anchor show, so they left Jay in that role and asked if I would want to go to SportsCenter, and I was ready to go. And so I went to SportsCenter for a few months and did Outside the Lines also and a couple other things. And my contract was coming up, and that's when I really did just decide to take my talents to Manhattan. I suppose I had thought about it. I didn't really want to stay in Connecticut, and
nobody wants to stay in Bristol.
There are people, in fairness to poor Bristol. You have a family of kids, great place to raise kids. Fine. Beautiful. As a single woman, that was not where I wanted to live anymore. And I had spent almost 10 years there, or I guess 8 years with my New York time. It was great, but it was time to go. And I figured I would take a chance and move into my studio apartment in New York and see if I could find a job, and thankfully I did.
You are now at CBS Sports with Brandon Tierney and Tiki Barber in the mornings. The show is called TBD in the AM. Approximately how many zip sweaters does Tiki own?
Oh my gosh. No, not just zip sweaters. Tiki Barber puts me to shame every morning. I mean, he should. To me, the beauty of doing radio is that right now I don't have to put makeup on and get TV ready per se. So I still get ready. I take a shower, I do my hair. Tiki's like tie and zip sweater, or a vest and a zip sweater. He had a pocket watch the other day. Best dressed man in radio without a doubt. The hat, even today, skull cap and something else. And I'm like, how do you look so good? It is 6 o'clock in the morning. It's insane.
I have no idea how you can. I cannot speak until I've had 2 cups of coffee, and it's 10 a.m. and
you figure it out.
Talking for 3 hours, but by 9 a.m. it blows my mind.
I'm trying to think. I think I've had 2 venti type coffees, so I've probably had about 40 ounces of coffee before we go on the air.
Okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then I'll go through probably a couple more of those.
We were talking earlier about Deadspin and breaking a Notre Dame story, and you had a Deadspin moment too.
I did, and this was, this is interesting for me because Deadspin's report on what happened, I don't think their initial one, because I think they linked it to an Atlantic City newspaper on what happened to me at the Mike and Mike roast, or what I did at the Mike and Mike roast. The first thing was correct, but they put a story out there that an anonymous source told them that I had cursed Jesus, and they wrote a quote, never said it, didn't happen. And my rant in this roast was not about Jesus, and it wasn't religious, and that turned into everybody picking it up, and Jacobson reportedly said this. And so, when I see a story like this come out on Deadspin, I give them credit. It is accurate. But I also know that they have written things that are not accurate. And it's a tough line that I have with There's so many sites out there. What do you believe and what don't you believe?
Yeah, and we were talking about this before the show started, that you kind of, as a reader, you have to kind of parse out what you choose to believe. You have to have a cynical take on it. And in fairness to Deadspin, this is also under its first editor, Will Leach, at the time, 2007 or 2008.
Yeah, they've gone under a lot of changes.
It's been 5 or 6 years, and I feel like Deadspin now was like, we placed a call, tried to reach this person for comment. There's much more reporting.
And I remember at the time when my incident happened, I think it was the Big Lead, they did a story where they said, we've been reporting this story that we found from somebody else, and we've made some calls, and we can't find anybody to confirm that she said this now. And that's great, but it's what we talk about now. What if, if you find out something isn't true that's been put out there, nobody cares. There's
a rush to be first rather than be the first one who's correct.
Yeah, but no, I think in fairness, Deadspin, they have a different level of accountability than an ESPN or CBS or some online group like that's a larger company has. They put it out there. It looks like they did their legwork. And some people were saying, well, why didn't they actually, they don't have a confrontation with Manti Te'o, and you can take it to many different levels. They really did a lot of legwork. If you read that story and talk to a lot of different people, you can judge for yourself if you want to believe it.
And they did that story in under a week. They found out about it on Friday. Timothy Burke apparently worked all weekend. By Monday, had figured out, had connected who the actual girl was,
right,
and published the story by Wednesday. That's really impressive.
There was an interesting quote, and I can't remember who put it out, but from Bradley from the Washington Post, saying, we print what people tell us. So it was something along the lines of, how often do you print lies? Well, we may print them every day because we believe what people tell us. Just because it's a reputable newspaper, just because it's a reputable site, there is some element, even when you're doing a very thorough research of something, where you are believing people and taking them at their word.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. Troll bag, reader mail.
All right.
I asked for questions on Twitter, and the people who, some people are weird, but for the most part, I screen out the really bad ones. Brian was the first one to write in. He says, "Does Skip Bayless smell like caramel hard candy?"
I didn't notice that. I mean, is he supposed to? Because Skip, no caramel smell. I didn't notice anything like that.
I think I don't know. It's something about the aging fitness freak.
Yeah. No, I will say this. I've never met anybody who is as much of a fitness freak as he is. I mean, will not let anything cross his lips that is sugar or anything, and is well beyond any level of health that I could be in. No way.
What's your take on Skip? Because obviously Amy K. Nelson is a coworker of mine, and she has this huge blind spot where she's like, Skip's a sweetheart, and Michelle Beadle has nice things to say about Skip Bayless, and yet I find that all these people left ESPN just the same.
Yeah, well, I don't think they left because of him.
Of course not.
Skip is very different as a person that you get to know than what his on-air persona is. I'll say this.
He's not a satanic viper.
He believes everything as fervently as he does and as he argues on air. That, without a doubt. Even if you're talking about movies, we get into huge arguments over movies because, like Little Miss Sunshine, there's no way that a grandfather would teach his daughter to striptease. That's not real. Well, it's a movie. It's not supposed to be real. He can't get past that. But he loves animals. He is very concerned. When my dad died, the emails that I got from him and the support I got from him, the way you see him on TV, you would never expect. He is a very kind person, very smart person. Those who say he doesn't know sports, he does. He has covered sports for a very long time.
He is capable
but he's also
of
a little crazy. Yes.
Interesting.
But I will say this. I also think he's a little crazy, and he would say things about me that probably I'm a little crazy. So he just is so passionate. And I don't always agree with him, but he says some very smart things also.
All right. Next up, reader Ali said, how much hypothetically would it take for you to stop rooting for the Lions?
It'll never happen. Because the day that I stop rooting for the Lions is the day that they're going to win the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to be able to root for them. And I'm stuck because it will happen. So maybe I'm the jinx, and if I stop, then they'll win. I can't. This is from childhood. I have a stupid bobblehead from 1982 of this Lions figure.
I'm so sorry.
I can't.
I'm a Seahawks fan. It's not much better for us, although we actually have reason for hope right now. But
we have reason for hope right now. I think they need a change at head coach, which kills me to say because I think they need a little more structure, or they need a general manager to come in who's going to give them that. But I will always be a Lions fan. It is sad, I know, but it's all right. I have other teams that do
That's good.
better.
I mean, yeah, Detroit has reasons to be.
Yeah, and I got to be honest. I appreciate anybody who sticks with their team, and I will always be a Lions fan. I always will.
You can't just change teams.
No.
Like, you're stuck with your alliance.
And if you do change, you can never go back. I warn people. My brother was a Ohio State PhD, Michigan undergrad, and when he gets mad at Michigan, he says, "I'm going to just cheer for Ohio State." And I'm like,
what?
Yeah, I know. No, I'm like, if you go to the dark side, you cannot come back. You have to stay. So that's for anything, any team.
Man. All right, I'm going to close the show with Fumbler. I have a weekly NFL column called Fumbler that takes little funny takes on the internet and memes. This week, John Boyes, who's another SB Nation writer, and I got into it making jokes about Dan Dierdorf, imagining him as this...
my current colleague.
Your current colleague. As a kind of inhuman buffoon. So you don't have to comment on things. John started things off by saying... Dan Dierdorf uses a spoon to eat Chex Mix. Eats Chex Mix with a spoon. And then he also said Dan Dierdorf boils his laundry. I hopped on. I said Dan Dierdorf eats silica packets. And did you?
Poor Dan. You know what? I'll say this: we had him on the radio show this week, and he was great. It was great talking about the game and giving us some analysis on the teams, and stuck up for me when my coworkers were talking Ohio State over Michigan.
I will throw your colleague one bone at he correctly said he's like, am I the only one scratching my head when John Fox took that knee with with 31 seconds left, and when Dan Dierdorf is calling you out on bad coaching decisions, man. Whew.
Please, my mother was calling him out on bad coaching decisions. That was bad. That was bad.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to a close for another excellent episode of Uffsides. Dana, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You can follow Dana online at Twitter, at Dana Jacobson. Check out TBD in the AM on CBS Sports Radio. Follow that online at TBD in the AM is the Twitter handle. And enjoy the games this weekend.
Thanks.
Man, Super Bowl's coming up. See you next time.